obligatory injury update, Robert, I suppose.
Obligatory, yeah, there's a couple out this week. Nick Malcheski with his knee will miss, and Jesse Lonergan will miss as well, so another mid down. So he subluxed his shoulder last week, so we're hopeful he can, in a week or two, be able to play and finish the season off. So and then he'll need an operation, so he'll need an op at some stage.
Who, I guess, do you kind of bring in this time to cover him?
Yeah, it was Sean Lemons has had a couple in the reserve, so he'll replace Nick, and Mitch Hallahan will play in the midfield, so he'll be in.
How was Trent? Was it pretty ambiguous, I guess, how he went down in the reserves?
Did you see the vision of it?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Oh no, it looked like he'd been shot. He just fell over, so he's ripped the, I don't know the name of the muscle, but the groin. He's ripped it off the bone. So we thought it'd be surgery, but the surgeon said that's what the surgery does, is what he's done to himself. So out of a bad situation, it's the best case scenario. So he'll be rehabilitation for 8 to 10 weeks just to get that right. So he's something out for the year, but he won't need any surgical intervention. So it's not as bad as it's bad, but it's not as bad as we first thought.
How do you feel going into GWS then, Robert? Because we know midfield's
their strength, their run.
On the ground, but their midfield's particularly deep.
Oh, it is. You know, they've got 41 players to pick from, so you certainly love that luxury, and they've got some good mids coming back that are available. So yeah, that's going to be a real test for us. I mean, our inexperienced midfield's done exceptionally well the last few weeks, so it's a bigger task for them. There's no doubt about that. But we'll have to put some strategies in place to hopefully be able to slow their ball movement down and to be able to give our forwards an opportunity. So we think if we can get the ball inside our forward line, we can create enough opportunities. Last week we did. We were just poor at execution at times, the final kick. But certainly over the last 6 weeks, but even the last 2 or 3 when all those players out, I think we've shown a lot of character and a lot of mental resilience, and hopefully we can do that again.
Will you have to try and slow it down a little bit, do you think?
Oh, I don't think we can have a shootout. Their ability to score on counter-attack and score on turnover, and they're very quick. So I think if we had a shootout as such that we play quick both ways, it'd suit them. So we've got to have some measures at times. Hopefully it rains.
Where do you kind of place GWS in terms of the teams that you've kind of played this year so far?
Well, I said at the time they're as good as we've played. So the only thing when they get in the finals is the inexperience of having not played finals. They've got some players who have, like Shaw and Griffin and Patfull and Johnson. So they're Mumford, so they're going to help them. There's no doubt. But they're just about the complete package. Maybe tall defenders, you would think, if they got some injuries to some key spots, might hurt them. But they've got coverage in every other area in the ground. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're there on the last day.
Brownie gave Tommy Lynch a fair rap the other day. You heard what he said about him?
I did. The big forwards stick together, don't they? So yes, there's certainly a big statement. There are some great players in the competition, but it's certainly an acknowledgement of where Tom's at as a player, and he's had a great year. To be able to do what he's done, he's missed. I think he's kicked reasonably accurately, but he's missed some shots that maybe he could have got at times. He could have put himself up, I suppose, in front of the Coleman. But he's got. I think the pleasing thing is there's a lot of. I think Tom said it himself that he's a very humble young lad, but there is a lot of improvement left in him, which is great for him and great for us.
A comment like that, some players it can either be positive or negative. They start to, but as you say, he's a humble lad, so he'll take that on board in the right way. He won't sort of. Oh,
there's no doubt about that. Yeah, he won't get ahead of himself. The two most impressive things about Tom is that he's a competitor and he's got a great deal of pride in his performance and just wants to compete all the time, and that he always looks for improvement. So he's never going to be content where he's at.
Does your young team bristle when they come up against a team like GWS, considering that age is roughly the same, a little bit, much the same? Do they sort of get a little bit extra?
No, it's more a media thing about any rivalry with GWS. I really hope GWS do well. I mean, having coached Leon myself and been involved with him, or not coaching, been involved coaching with him, and knowing some of the players and what they've done, I think it's fantastic. I think now the way the two teams are set up is completely different. There's different rules. they have more access to first round draft picks, all that sort of thing, and that's great for them. But from our point of view, there's no rivalry there.
Speaking of rivalry, obviously there's another team on the coast that had a bit of a boost yesterday with a certain name. What are your thoughts? You obviously you couldn't have missed it, could you, if you were on the coast yesterday?
No, I think it's great. I think it's great for Gold Coast as an area. I mean, you mentioned Tom Lynch, what Brown has said, and obviously Haynes a great player as well. So I think the two clubs having great players, I think it's going to be great for the area. And I think if both teams can be successful and play finals, I think it's going to be terrific for the people on the coast.
As you say, because some people would rate, that's a good point, because Hayne would be considered perhaps the best player at his best in rugby league, and you've got Tommy Lynch.
Tommy Lynch and Ablett. So no, I think it's a great selling point. No, we just next year, if we can get injuries right and a few other things, we can play finals, and I think it'd be great for us great for the area, the region, to have two elite teams in the finals.
Does it excite you seeing GWS where they're at the moment? And do you think the Sunnies can, given a fit list, can do something similar?
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. But again, people compare the two, which is fine. I suppose we both start-up teams. But as I said before, I'm thrilled that they're going well. I've got a lot of time for them, and the way they've gone about it, I think it's terrific. And as I said, I know a lot of people there, so I think it's great. But all we worry about internally is the way we go about it. And obviously, we've been struck down with some players, but we're reasonably confident what we've put in place, that once we get players available and we trade well and we draft well next year, that know that we can be a force.
Do you feel like fatigue setting in some of the younger players, like your Jesse Joyces and Callum Archie's? Is the load eventually becoming
yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that, a little bit of the fatigue, and that's got to be mindful of. We haven't got a lot to pick off. There's quite a few bigger blokes in the seconds to come in, but there's not many runners. So with the fatigue, if it does set in and we get more injuries, it's going to put a load on some other players. So anyway, we've got to do what we've got to do. I think a pleasing thing of the last 6 weeks is the resilience shown. I think the resilience previously, the last year and a bit, has been up and down a little bit, but I think the last 6 weeks have been really pleasing in that area.
just on a couple of those runners through the twos, Braden Fiorini and Adam Sard, how far away do you think they are?
Adam just needs another game in the reserves, so he'll be available next week, and hopefully Aaron Hall will be available next week. Braden's coming off a reasonable knee injury. It's only his second game, so he would need at least a couple to be fair for him. So he may, if his form continues, may get a chance towards the end of the season.
Sign's obviously promising with 31 touches and 4 goals.
Yeah, we rate him really highly. We think he's unfortunately got his knee injury because he'd be playing senior footy by now, and I think having those games would have been great for him next year. But we see him as a long-term future prospect in our midfield.
Dave Swallow still closing in on playing, or is
close this week? Looks like, fingers crossed, touch wood, do all those sorts of things, that he'll be available to play in the NEFL next week.
What does he have to kind of do to show he has the fitness or the capacity?
He's just been building his training loads, I suppose, and a football load. He did a fair bit of running today and looked great. We don't feel he needs another week of football for competitive stuff, tackling and change of direction under pressure. So if he gets through that next week, he'll be fine to play.
What's the benefit in giving him a couple of NEFL games, Rob? Maybe from the outside it might be hard to see a benefit in giving a guy 2 or 3 games in the NEFL.
And that's up to him. That's completely up to David. I think David, with all the work he's put in, as long as he feels comfortable with himself, that he'd just like to play a game or two just for his own confidence, so he can head into pre-season so I suppose a bit of doubts are raised. So it's more for his mental state than anything.
And Jager, is he?
He's not playing this week.
No, he's not playing this week. But are you putting him on ice for the rest of the year, or is it a week?
We'll see how he is next week. Jager still wants to, I suppose, push forward at this stage. So if he can't play next week, you'd probably think that it's probably unlikely to play the rest of the year. That there'll only be 2 games and NEFL left. And he would need some weeks to build up his footy fitness again. So hopefully he can be on the track next week, and that gives him a chance to play.
Are you sure on what he can do? We've only had a couple of glimpses of him, but obviously he's out of contract. You're looking, other clubs are looking. Are you sort of sure what he can do at this stage?
I suppose you can never be sure, are you? I mean, some other players come back from from big injuries, and it's not so much that injury; it's other where their muscles can cope and the load, and because missing, I suppose, having missed so much football. I don't think he'd ever be certain, but what we've seen of football-wise, that looked, having said that, against lower teams, but he looked okay the way he moved, but it's a matter of his body being able to sustain that.
What have you made of Touk Miller's performance over the past couple of weeks? Has he really stepped up?
Oh, he has. No, he had a great year last year, had the ankle injury, which I suppose curtailed his footy a lot, but one positive, well, there's a couple of positives, but one positive for him, with our injuries to midfield, he's been thrown in the midfield and shown that he can be a bona fide midfielder. So there's another midfielder for next year, and I would have thought he'd be close to our starting midfield next year. He's really stepped up his work rate, his toughness in tight, his ability to win the hard ball. No, that's been fantastic.